And I will unmute, and I will go to Susanna, who will introduce our panelists.
Awesome, thank you. A lot of great information, Jake. I think my head is spinning. But I like solutions. Solutions are good, and I'm kind of appalled. I've heard this through a lot of different things that progressives are trying to do. That fear factor, we should be afraid of developers, we should be afraid of the union, we should be afraid of getting sued. I don't know, man, I've met a lot of lawyers that are on the progressive side. I think they've got our back. So great presentations, everyone. I've got a few questions that have been submitted. There's a couple of people monitoring the comments and chat. So if anybody is wherever you're connecting and watching this, please feel free to put a comment in. I want to introduce our amazing panel. We have 4 awesome people on board with us tonight, and they are going to be asking questions of our speakers as well. And we'll give them first shot, and then I've got a few questions that I'll pose to them as well. First up, we have Andy Kelley. Andy is currently on the Berkeley OREB board, longtime Berkeley tenant, past chair of the Berkeley Public Works Commission. We have Allyssa Victory. Alyssa's a civil rights attorney in Oakland. She is a fellow ADEM delegate. Yay, go ADEMs. And she is an Oakland native. We have Nicole Gardner. Nicole hails from where I live, out in Antioch. She is the founder and director of Facing Homelessness. She is probably the strongest advocate for the homeless out here in East Contra Costa County and beyond as well. And she was also an OR Contra Costa endorsed candidate in 2020. And then we have Anamarie Avila-Farias. She is currently with the California Housing Finance Agency. She is a board member there. She's also a California Democratic Party executive board member, and she was also an endorsed candidate by Our Revolution Contra Costa. So these are your 4 panel members. So I am opening this up. We've still got all of our speakers here who are available to answer questions. Just use the raise your hand, either using the little hand raise function or like just physically raise your hand. I can see all of you, I think. If you have your camera on, I can. So who wants to go first? Nicole, you're on.
Hi, so thank you all for those amazing presentations. That was great. I learned so much. So thank you also, Susanna, for the invitation. So I guess I can start off with just being a homeless advocate for years and having my own nonprofit and being really involved with the Unhoused here in Antioch. I am just super excited to see all of the stuff that you guys are doing in Richmond, Gail. I actually was born and raised in Richmond, so I'm so excited. Like, I had chills when you were speaking about all of the things that you guys are doing, because I've been advocating for a lot of those things in our own city. I was talking to a team member of mine even yesterday about the downtown streets team that they have like kind of all over the Bay Area, and that kind of looks similar to your SOS. If I hope I got that right. Safe, or I was writing really fast, but Safe Organization is Space. Is that what it is?
Safe Organized Spaces.
Safe Organized Space. Okay. And I'm going to do some more research on them as well. But yeah, it's kind of similar, doing the same thing. So I'm super excited that you guys are like in it. It's like that trickle effect, how, you know, the city gave them the funding, and then they were able to eventually get that funding down to the unhoused and get them some jobs and things like that. So I know you were saying that the county has been helping you guys with the program and stuff like that. And I know, just dealing with the county and speaking to people that are, you know, with the county, that they do lack a lot of resources. So have you guys had any difficulties with trying to get the resources and things like that from the county for this particular program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have the county is part of like we have an ad hoc committee of 3 council members, or 2 council members and the mayor, and John Joya is our supervisor from the county, and he and some county staff join us at that meeting, and we're always, you know, trying to find ways to get more funding, and we were able to get like about well, it was not quite $500,000, but to help with from the county, a grant to put HCEB, Housing Consortium of the East Bay, in charge of a couple unsanctioned sites we have. We were originally going to use that money for a safe park, but we ran into some problems with some backlash from the community. So we decided to keep a couple of these RV unsanctioned sites in place and use that funding from the county to help with the services in place, but it's not a good enough solution. So now we're working on a transitional village and such. So we do coordinate with the county. Sometimes it's really hard. We have their core services and such. So we understand we need to do it collaboratively. And we're also seeking grant funding from Caltrans and, every avenue we can that offers any grants we're seeking it from, as well as from we're seeking some land from private owners and such. So I wish the county has a couple of motels in operation. I don't know in East County if it's similar, but it is a problem, but there apparently more is supposed to be coming from the state and the feds. So we want to really make sure we're up there and ready to receive it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Awesome, thank you. So who's up next? Don't be shy. I do have a couple of other questions that I can go to. Nicole, Anamarie, Andy. Andy's got your hand raised. Go, Andy. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's all have you next.
Oh, great. I just want to say thank you for having me here tonight. This is a wonderful presentation. I think the more work we do in affordable housing, to be honest, the more frustrating it becomes, because we have rent control as a primary mechanism, but it's very limited what we can do there. And the failing of rent control is it only helps keep prices down one tenant at a time. The moment someone moves, you have a market rate unit again. And then the other kind of tool that we have in the toolbox is an affordable unit that was subsidized or required in the construction, where it's a percentage of, area median income, the average income, but just because everyone else's income goes up doesn't mean that a low income or a very low income tenant suddenly also had an increase in their ability to pay. And so those tools that are the main things we use help, but they don't address the overall housing affordability of folks who either aren't in those units or overall. So I loved Jake's presentation, because that's the question I've been asking a lot, and a lot of us is housing's too expensive for everyone, and how do we use the value of housing to try to turn the narrative on its head? And so one of the areas that was also brought up is all of the older buildings we have and how much cheaper it is to maybe convert some of those to affordable housing than it is to do brand new market rate construction. And I kind of wanted to ask the panel of speakers, whoever might want to jump in and answer, what ideas they have to preserve existing housing and to convert that to nonprofit or land trust housing. The problem we see it time and again is there's so much more funding for new construction, but those units are almost twice the cost of buying an existing building and protecting the existing tenants. And so I'm just curious, what the panel sees as opportunities there.
Stephen, would you like to start us off on that question?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So recently, the median price per unit of apartments in Berkeley in properties with 4 units or more is around $300,000. So that's a lot less than the cost of new construction. Now, a lot of those properties have deferred maintenance. The fact that landlords are getting outrageous rents doesn't mean that they're pouring money back into the properties, bringing them up to standard and making sure that they'll survive over the long term. But nonetheless, paying that kind of price plus putting some money into renovation is a lot less expensive than new construction, which is these days coming in at easily $600,000 and $700,000 a unit. So the city of Berkeley has what it calls a small sites program, where money is put aside to buy small rental properties. The larger nonprofit organizations tend not to be interested in small sites because they don't have the economies of scale of management, and because working with existing properties has a lot more unknowns than when you build new and you know exactly what's in the building. Unfortunately, at this point, there's pretty much no money left in Berkeley's small sites program. So I would say that the number one thing that's needed is, especially for East Bay cities, but I'll focus in on Berkeley, to not only have a small sites program, but put real money into it, and then to work with local organizations, which are mostly land trusts, that are willing to help the tenants create cooperatives in small rental properties. Because one way that you deal with the high costs of management of rental properties is by getting the residents to take on some of the responsibilities themselves, and make it more like home ownership. Provide them with support, provide them with training, but but give them a significant part of the responsibilities. I realize this is getting into a political minefield, but it's one of the things that I find very strange in the politics in Berkeley right now, is that there's a big push for a tenant opportunity to purchase ordinance. And yet, if the city were to pass that, there's no money to help the tenants actually exercise that opportunity to purchase. And there's no capacity, or very little capacity, on the part of the existing land trusts to assist the tenants in that process and to help fix up the buildings. So to my mind, thinking through how do you make a program work, number one, we need to put money into the small sites program. Number two, we need to work with the land trusts to help them buy some of those properties. Because frankly, I think that if there was money in the program, a lot of landlords would be perfectly happy to sell to sell to an organization backed by city money. And then if in fact there's money sitting there and we can't spend it, then yeah, pass a tenant opportunity to purchase ordinance and force that opportunity in. But don't put the cart before the horse. Get the money in place so that you can actually start to buy the properties and build up capacity of local organizations to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Barton. Alfred, with your work on the Renters Council, have you been able to follow up with some of the ideas that Dr. Barton has talked about for solutions for renters?
Sure. So at the state level, periodically there are bills that are introduced to encourage preservation of existing buildings that are lower cost and to turn them into income restricted low income housing. That said, there are advantages of newer buildings. For example, buildings built before the 90s were not wheelchair accessible, and that's becoming a type of housing we need more and more of as people get older. So there is definitely a trade-off with the older buildings, is that they're cheaper for a reason. The Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act example is a good one, where it's a good idea, and part of the idea with TOPA was also to slow down some of the speculation by putting in a certain amount of time for the tenants to get together the money themselves to buy. see other things. I know in New York, back in the 60s and 70s, when a lot of landlords were abandoning buildings, the city would take buildings there, the property taxes hadn't been paid, and they would set them up as these limited, what they call limited equity co-ops, where you own the building, but the amount of money you can sell your apartment for when you move out is also limited. So I think coupled with a mixed income model, that could help solve that funding issue, where some of these buildings, especially the ones that are rent controlled, do have a mix of incomes in them already. And so when we were talking about social housing earlier, obviously there's a need to build new social housing, but purchasing some of these existing mixed income rent controlled buildings could also be a way to do it.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you, Alfred.
Gail.
Sorry, sir.
Okay. I was just going to say that in the city of Alameda, we have so much prohibitions and laws restricting rental property and what houses can be rental property. And I was just wondering, in Richmond, have you been able to get around some of the zoning restrictions to have these buildings be able to be converted for renters?
Mm-hmm. I don't think we've had much in terms. We do have some. There are fees, to become even a small landlord. You have the rental inspection fee. You have the rent control fee. You have I forgot. There's some other fee involved. Oh, business license fee, because it is a business. I think this might dovetail a little bit with what this course of discussion is about right at this point in time. And I'll make this very quick. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jason Hickel. I don't know if he's an economic anthropologist, I think from England. And he's all about degrowth, because he says when people talk about the economy has to grow and you have to have increased gross or increased domestic products, or I'm just getting familiar with him myself. And I was able to get in touch with him because I wanted to learn more. And he sent me an email and I asked him specifically about housing. And he said this, and this is what he basically is saying, if I was in charge of a city, not that I'm in charge of the whole city, I'm one vote, but I would say that all second homes and all private rental units be brought into public ownership with fair compensation to the owners and made available for affordable prices, with funds dedicated to improving the housing stock and such. So I know that's a kind of a radical solution again, but it's something that could be tweaked, or a variation of it, to look at how a city could acquire more people who have a home and an extra home or rental units, and bring them under the control of the city and utilize it for truly affordable rents. So I know that's not really what you're asking, Sherry, but it's a way to get more affordable rental units in place.
Great, thank you, Gail. Thanks, everybody. Allyssa, you are up next, and after that I have Anamarie, and then I have several questions from people who are putting them in comments. So we'll get to that. Go ahead, Allyssa.
Thank you all for being here and for just sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience with us. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to try to just ask one and we'll follow up with y'all directly so we can hear others. For Gail and Jake, I just want to know if you all can explain more about the vision of Public Bank East Bay. I helped to advise SF and Oakland in 2015 on how to create local public banks. And just wondering what your vision is for the East Bay, if this is oversight or you're going to advise East Bay localities that want to create a public banking structure, or what kind of timelines you're looking at for implementation for local governments to do this.
I going to defer to Jake on that. I think he's been more active in it right at this point in time.
Yeah, we're actually really close to building a bank. We're getting the charter and the application ready. What the original bank is going to be is going to be the Public Bank of the East Bay. We want it to actually be the East Bay area. So the first 4 agencies are going to be Richmond, Berkeley, and Oakland, and this county of Alameda. And so those are going to be the founding agencies. And the way the board is going to work is we're going to have something along the lines of 5-5-5. So we have 5 community representatives, 5 financial and banking representatives that know how to do all the compliance and legal regulations, and then 5 city, county elected official representation. And so that is the gist of how the bank would come up. It's going to be a full bank, but it's going to be a wholesale bank. So you're not going to actually be able to go there and get a checking account. What that bank will actually help is it will partner with all the local financial institutions to help them become more powerful and help them basically put out more financing into the community with better rates. Hopefully I answered some of the question.
Just as a follow-up, from what Stephen mentioned, that some cities are moving forward with TOPA, tenant opportunity to purchase, but there's kind of a missing gap in tenant groups having the funds to be able to outright purchase their buildings. Do you envision the public bank being able to fill that type of financing gap?
Yes, it may not be directly through the public bank unless like Berkeley, if Berkeley, the city of Berkeley does it, it can probably just go to the public bank. But if it's going to be like the tenants are going to be able to purchase with money and they're going to need to find financing, they would probably go to a local bank, and that bank would partner with the Public Bank East Bay, and we would come up together with the solution. We'd probably already have some program for this in place, but then that would help those tenants purchase that the housing.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next up, I know Anamarie had a question. So go ahead, Anamarie.
Oh, I didn't have a question. I didn't know if you wanted me to go ahead and talk about a little bit about CalFHA and just, Kitty, or it's up to you.
Go ahead. You have great
Okay, great.
So.
Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's great to see so many housing advocates. I'm Anamarie Avila-Farias. I've actually been operating in the space of affordable housing for coming up on 30 years. I've had the pleasure of working in various cities and counties, Contra Costa, San Francisco, Alameda County. I'm currently a board of director for the California Housing Finance Agency Board, which is the largest bank, the state bank that finances affordable housing throughout the state of California. And we administer all the tax credits and the bond money that we administer to banks locally and nonprofit developers. For Contra Costa specifically, it's been really frustrating. We are the only county that has yet to pass an affordable housing bond. And I think really before, there's so many programs and we've been so progressive in so many other parts of the Bay Area and other parts of California, but we can't just seem to get our act together here in Contra Costa and get some real leadership. So I think my lesson learned in all my years of practicing is there has to be political will, and it really needs to start with our county board of supervisors. And we just don't have the political will there to really put together public policies, this fragmented Band-Aid effect that, we have. Probably Richmond's the most progressive city around affordable housing. But other than that, every other city in Contra Costa is not doing anything robust enough to really address the crisis. And as the crisis already exists, it keeps growing and compounding. And so that's really unfortunate. So the best thing we can do is really to start organizing. The other thing that's really missing from this county is we really need more affordable housing developers to come and develop in our county. They're not going to come here unless our cities start creating programs to encourage land use development in the municipalities or in the county. I'm hoping this year, there's a lot of us already thinking about this. We're really hoping that we can really get on the 2022 ballot an affordable housing bond. And, we're organizing So please reach out if you're interested in working on that, because I think that's really critical to solving a lot of our problems, or at least not solving, but at least starting to create programs at the local level, is getting the County Board of Supervisors to acknowledge that it is time that we pass a robust affordable housing bond in Contra Costa County. And having a bond then allows us to create these programs and create these partnerships. We needed to address, homelessness in Contra Costa County. We need to be able to create emergency housing. We need to be able to create transitional housing, and we need to create permanent and then homeownership. And right now there is nothing. The state, beyond the state of California, we don't have the nonprofits here. So therefore they're not going to go to the state and say, give us money. I mean, who's going to go apply for that? The city? No, because you need housing practitioners who know what they're doing to do. You need developers and housing practitioners to be able to do these applications to get this federal money and state money to bring it down to the municipality. So we need to infuse that at the local level. If we have an affordable housing bond that gets passed, then that is the stimulus money that starts to create this synergy around wanting to create these policies. Secondly, another policy just beyond the Board of Supervisors is locally. There's been so much NIMBYism in Contra Costa County. It's so unreal. It has stifled a lot of development here. And the only development that has really passed progressively here has been for-profit, fair market rate housing. And that has been detrimental to Contra Costa, that there has not been a balance of affordable housing development throughout Contra Costa County. And then you have it concentrated in areas. And then, the NIMBYism between the communities is unbelievable. So those policies, before you even get the money, it's like we all need to embrace that we have a problem. We all need to embrace that we need to pass an affordable housing bond, because once we vote that in, that is being the commitment that it's time to create the policies and the programs at the state, at the local level, and to be able to advocate for what we really need in Contra Costa County. And then the low-hanging fruit that all cities should be doing is the state passed ADU ordinance and accessory dwelling unit. That should be encouraged throughout California. I'm proud to say, as a board member, we just passed the loan program. We are now giving people $25,000 to apply for a loan, and we set up the first $25,000 to start your permitting fees, and then hook you up with a bank that helps you finance your affordable housing unit. And the fact that cities have not, there's still cities in Contra Costa County who have not adopted accessory dwelling units. And that is a pathway to creating a lot of inventory online very quickly. And then coupling it with the state financing tools is a huge missed opportunity. But we really just need to start. I feel that 2022 should be the year that Contra Costa County residents really pivot and organize and first work on a ballot measure to get an affordable housing bond on the ballot. And then the rest is really just strategically planning with the 19 cities of how everybody's going to do their fair share, because Richmond can't solve all of Contra Costa's problems. We have to work together so that everybody's doing their fair share of affordable housing and allowing homeownership to thrive in Contra Costa. That is how we break poverty. And nobody is creating the economic ladder of homeownership from rental to housing because that infrastructure just does not exist. So I'm very encouraged to see everyone having this dialogue and looking forward to being at the table with you all. And Susanna, thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to answer any questions or give feedback as well.
Awesome, thank you. I've got some questions that have been submitted in the comment section on Facebook Live, I believe. And then I know Andy has his hand up. So Andy, did you have a question for Anamarie? Or based on?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as to what Anamarie said about the need for a affordable housing bond in Contra Costa County, and connect that with what was said earlier about that Prop 13 court case. If a community group, even if it's supported by a bunch of elected officials, unions, qualifies that measure in Contra Costa, you all have the opportunity to pass it with 50% support, whereas the Alameda County bond and San Francisco bonds all had to be at 2/3. The power of being able to pass that 50%, those 50% measures is really something as progressives we need to look at, because it's so hard to get that 66%, but we can all get the signatures. And it's much easier to run the signature campaign on its own when we don't have candidate campaigns. So just every time that comes up, I just want to speak about what a game changer that is and what an organizing opportunity it is, because I think conservatives are going to go to the state ballot in the next 5-6 years to try to get rid of that again. And we should really take advantage of it while we can.
Andy, I
Awesome,
just want
thank
to
you.
briefly correct one thing that you said, which is that, and I'll preface this with I'm not a lawyer, but that change in that basically came out of the court ruling California Cannabis Coalition v. City of Upland a few years ago, where it dropped it down to a majority if you do it via collecting signatures. That almost certainly does not apply to bond measures, because it's a different part of the state constitution that is written really differently than the general voter approval requirements. It's a whole other section. So folks can just, for everything else, like a parcel tax or payroll tax or business license tax, yeah, that applies, but probably not to a property tax increase for a bond.
All
Yeah,
right,
I meant
thank
to
you,
say parcel
Matthew.
tax. Thank you, Matthew.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions that have been submitted, so I'm going to roll through those. We're like bumping up to our end time, so if y'all can hang with us for a few more minutes, that would be fantastic. So some of these questions are kind of directed to specific speakers, so this might be a little easier. Two people, Laura Nakamura and Paola Laverde, had questions regarding a vacancy tax. Essentially, how about a vacancy tax to support funding for local affordable housing? And Gail, this one's probably for you. Is Richmond working on a vacancy tax?
Absolutely. We actually had one a few years back that did not pass, but it was put on by the mayor. We don't have a good relationship with the mayor, by the way, but he put it on, or he advocated for it, but he didn't work on it at all. So it had virtually no campaign, and it did pretty good, but it didn't pass. So we're now looking at doing it again with a campaign. The unions are very much involved with wanting to have that go forward. So I'm not sure if it'll be 2022, it may very well, but yes, that's an important source of revenue.
Awesome, thank you, Gail. This one, I don't know, Jake, you might be the right person for this one. Kevin K is asking, do most countries allow foreign speculators to own land in their country? I know about a few of them, but not all of them, so you might know better.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when we started opening up the world and we try to westernize everyone's economy, we basically said everyone can buy whatever they want to in your country. And so, yeah, they do open it up to foreign investors. There are places like Singapore and Vancouver. I've heard of something in southern India and in, I believe it's Taiwan, where they have much tighter controls over what basically foreigners can buy in their market. But yeah, it's actually a normal thing to have foreign speculators. We have them here. Once we opened up the foreign cost controls, all the Chinese money, the Arabic money, the Brazilian money, the Russian money, they all came here and just started buying up ridiculous amounts of homes in cash.
Yeah, didn't we sell the docks in Southern California? I mean, seriously, what bonehead approved that one? Okay, Victor Aguilera has a question. I'm not sure who's most knowledgeable here, maybe Alfred. With the passage of SB 9 and 10, how quickly do you see cities moving into action?
Sure. So these two bills are very different. SB 9 is a state bill that takes effect automatically on the 1st, while SB 10 is a bill that empowers cities to do rezonings easier than before, but the city has to initiate it. So I think I'll talk a bit more about SB 10 because this is more relevant for local government. Is that what it says is that normally when a city wants to, let's say Alameda, for instance, if they want to rezone to allow apartment buildings where previously none were allowed, they would have to go through a very lengthy process. And with SB 10, as long as they're not allowing more than 10 homes on one lot, then it becomes much simpler. Where this can be useful is, for example, if the city has money to build social housing, but there's nowhere they can put it right now, they can change the zoning for it. And one thing that's sort of similar that City of Berkeley is currently looking at is what's called the Affordable Housing Overlay. And what the overlay does is it creates a separate set of rules if you're building affordable housing versus if you're building private for-profit housing. And that's a great way to open up more places for affordable apartment buildings without also opening it up to speculation. And so, for example, Berkeley's affordable housing overlay is written so that if you have a place where currently you're only allowed to build a house, if you're a private developer, that's all you can do. But if you are a affordable housing nonprofit, or if you're the city, then you can build apartment buildings. And so that way the nonprofits and cities aren't having to compete with the private companies for the land. Want to look more into this topic, the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts was one of the first to do it, and that's what Berkeley's proposal is based on.
Nice, thank you. Okay, so I've got one final question. We're at 7:06, and then we'll close out. This is from Paola Laverde, and this is referencing Jake's proposal, and she wanted to know if that only applies to single family homes. So Jake?
No, it should apply to all units, all residential real estate units. So condos, single family homes, multiplexes are kind of really not really a gray area, but they're basically condos or apartments, if you want to call them. Yeah, so it would apply to all types of all the residential real estate it would apply to. We didn't go over like what would happen if an investment trust owns the home or a corporation. There's a special case for that where we increase the resistance to make it hotter for them. And so they had to get rid. The whole point is to make them get rid of all their extra housing. And once they put that on the market, this is going to drive the prices down.
Got it. Okay, so brings us to the close of our event. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. You are amazing as always. Thank you to our panel members, ditto for that. Thank you to everybody who logged on. This will be posted, so please, please, please do share it. This is a critical topic. There's so many things that need to be done. Find Our Revolution East Bay on our website at ourrevolutioneastbay.org. And on behalf of Carol Coyote and myself as co-chairs of Our Revolution East Bay, I thank you. And Alfred, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just have one last thing to kind of tie us together with some of the other work that Our Revolution does. Is that when we're talking about all the speculation and all the companies from elsewhere buying the housing, is that it's tied to the larger issue of income inequality, both in the country and elsewhere. And you can't fix housing without fixing the whole economy because it's a good quarter of the economy. And some of the things that we also need to work on are things like transparency of ownership and other anti-corruption rules to keep people from having so much money in the first place.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, if you've ever tried to track down who's behind an LLC, you will really appreciate that transparency of ownership statement. It is freaking impossible. Okay, so thank you,
Stephen,
everybody.
Dr. Barton.
Oh, sorry, Jake.
Dr. Barton, do you have something to say?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just.
Oh, okay, you're just saying bye. Okay.
Thanks and goodbye.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Go off, have a great rest of the weekend. Stay dry or stay wet, depending on how much you love rain. We all love rain. And thank you.